right. Today we have a seller hybrid deal. So what a hybrid deal means is that typically there is a portion of the deal that you're buying the property subject to the existing financing, right? So that's the first normal part of a sub-2 deal. Now, the second part of a hybrid deal is usually that there is a equity portion and the seller is financing that equity portion to you as part of that sale. That's why there is two interest rates on this deal. There is one for the underlying loan that you're buying the property subject to the existing financing. And then there is, no, this is not hard money lending. Question though. And then there is a other portion for the equity portion. You can see how it kind of breaks down, right? The PITI principal, there's taxes and insurance for 1558. That is the amount of the underlying subject to deal. However, there is a seller carry portion. So this is the equity portion that I was referring to earlier. If the seller, let's say they're an example where they want to sell the property for as much money as possible, but realize that they cannot do this on the open market, that's why they also offer the seller financing, because then they still get to make the money, quote unquote. And let's say they finance $50,000, but then you decide to sell the property in 5 years or 3 years, then they're still due the entire amount, right? You could theoretically say, hey, I'm not going to sell this property for 30 years. And he or she will only get back this 50 grand over the course of 30 years. That's certainly possible. But that's a reason why some sellers sell it on a seller finance deal, because they want to maximize the purchase price that they're getting for the home. Okay, so today let's go ahead and plug in all of these numbers to see whether or not there is going to be a deal here, right? Now, yesterday I went plug-in numbers first. Today, let's go ahead and look at the properties first, right? So I'm going to pull up this property. Looks like it's being listed out for $1,700 a month. That square footage is definitely wrong. All right, so this is a townhome. Looks pretty much rent ready. And the floor is a little old. There's some carpet. I'll probably replace it. I'll probably put in some money to repaint the place on this property. But for the most part, I don't really imagine needing to do too much work besides for very cosmetic, which means you can either replace the carpet or you can probably paint the whole place. All right, so let's go ahead and get the rent. So the first thing we want to do is we want to Google HUD FMR. When you Google HUD FMR, you can come to here, the first link at the top, and then click on access to small area FMRs. FMR stands for fair market rents, okay? When you look up FY 2024, then you can go and click on Texas, and this was in Bexar County, and now you're going to get the rent ceiling, quote unquote, 78109. The rent ceiling by zip code, 78109. By zip code, by bedroom count. And you're going to see that the maximum rent here is $2,250 for a 3-bedroom and $2,690 for a 4-bedroom. I always write down the 3 and 4-bedroom just because, especially if you see that there's a garage, sometimes maybe there's an opportunity for you to convert the garage into an additional bedroom. $2,690. Okay. 78109. And this is just you being a little bit more creative when you underwrite the deal, because sometimes, I don't know, let's say AI, right? AI takes over the world and they say, hey, we can automatically update every single property, but you probably still needed to recognize that there's a garage door in the photos, and that's some computer vision technology. We're not going to get into that today, but you're going to have to figure out how to creatively turn something into a deal with your own creativity on what's going on. All right. Now I want to plug these numbers. The most important number here is that the number on the bottom right, where it says that 0.51 mile radius for 25 units, the average rent is $1,751. Okay, great. And I kind of love how on the posting they're estimating the long-term rental rates is $2,000, even though it's currently being listed at $1,700. even though it's also listed as 1751 here on this website. So I'm not really sure how you're gonna get 2019, but hey, to each their own, and that's why they gotta sell the property, right? So they're trying to make their money. All right. Now, if you go to the 4-bedroom rents, you're gonna see that it's $19.50. Now that's a $200 lift, turning a property from a 3-bedroom to a 4-bedroom. Now, is that worth it? Well, you got to figure out whether or not you're going to make money on it, right? And we're going to look about this in 2 ways. When you see that your PITI is $18.25 and your 4-bedroom rent is $19.50, that tells me that it's probably not worth converting it, because there's not enough spread between $19.50 and $18.24 for you to truly make money on it. Let's explain why. All right, let's plug in some of these numbers and you're going to see how it all floats out. All right, this property was for purchase price. I'm going to plug this in here. I'm going to put this on the right-hand side so you guys can see what's going on. As I pull in these numbers, and you guys can see and plug it in. Again, if you guys want a copy of the spreadsheet, just go to affordablehousing.io. And on the far right, there's a tab called Get Deal Analysis Tool. That's affordablehousing.io, Get Deal Analysis Tool, and you'll be able to get a copy of the spreadsheet. I did not create the spreadsheet from scratch. I simply got it from other people, and I just kind of modified it, to be honest with you, and tweaked it so that I can underwrite really quick, really fast. All right, on a rehab calculator, this property was 2397 square feet. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my painting section. Equals 2397. I'm going to divide that by 2 because I'm going to assume I only need to paint half the place. For flooring, I only saw carpet in like maybe a third of the property. So I'm going to do 2397 divided by 3. And that's going to be at roughly $3 a square foot to paint the place and $8 a square foot to underwrite as replacing the flooring. I got $500 to keep the outdoor clean and crispy, and then I got $1,500 for the roof in case there are any issues. But that's pretty much it for the most part. So that roughly kind of rounds out to about 14 grand. Just use that as a contingency. You probably won't use that much money, but can't hurt to have a little bit of money set aside in case there's anything that kind of pops up during an inspection. All right. Now for rent, how do we determine the rents? You have to take the lower of the two. Okay. See how for the FMR it says $22.50, but then the market rent says $17.51. I'm going to underwrite this property as $17.50. Why? Because of the rent reasonableness test. Okay, now I'm going to pull up the Housing Choice Voucher Guidebook. In this section, 2.2, there's a test called the Rent Reasonableness Test. And the Rent Reasonableness Test essentially states that the public PHA or the Public Housing Authority must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units, which means that you can't charge more for rent to a voucher holder simply because they're a voucher holder, right? For the obvious reasons. You can't do that. So when you compare what's reasonable, you have to take the market rent and you have to take the lower of the two. Where people will lose money is that they will look at the FMR and they'll say, oh, it's $22.50, and they underwrite at $22.50. When in reality, that's not the case because of the rent reasonableness test. Most likely, they are not going to allow you to charge that much more above the fair market rents. Okay. Now, if you say, hey, let me convert the garage because boom, I can get $26.90 and now I get a really good spread. The same test applies for a 4-bedroom. You have to compare the $26.90 and the $19.50, which was the fair market rent or the average rent for a 4-bedroom. So you can't, this is where people lose money. If you assume that you would have got $26.90 inclusive utilities, you would have been grossly overestimating the rent you can get for this property. So we're going to plug in $17.50. All right. Let's plug in the loan details now. All right. So the loan details, let's plug in the VA loan. Total monthly payment, $1,693. Okay, great. So let's do the $1,558 first. So the underlying loan is $187,659. 2.75% interest rate. That's a great interest rate. It matures on 8/1/2050, so I'm going to assume it started on 8/1/2020. There's another HVAC loan for $66.34. It doesn't matter what that is because we're just going to back into it. Seller portion. So there's a second portion for your second loan. That's how you would plug in your numbers for a seller finance hybrid deal. It's a 0% interest rate, so we want to put that in there. Start on 4/1/25. Okay, it's going to start a year later. No balloon. All right, that's great. Entry fee. $20,000 to the seller, $20,000, and $10,000 to the assignment. Great, got that in there. Now that I got all my numbers in, I got 2.5% for my closing costs. I got my renovations in there, so all my numbers are in there. Now my total payment is $1,693. So I'm going to equal $1,693. Subtract the principal portion of the subject to deal, the interest portion of the subject to deal, and also the principal portion of the seller finance payment. And that allows me to back into, in totality, what my property tax number is and also what my insurance number currently is. Right? So the whole point of this exercise is to back into the exercise of finding out what your property tax number is and the escrow amount, because that is affecting your entire cash flow calculation. Then you add an extra $30 for my monthly insurance, because typically that's a VA loan usually is for someone that might be living at the property right now. So the insurance policy is a primary residence policy. So for you to turn to a rental property, generally the insurance policy for a rental property is going to be more money. So that's why we add extra $30 each month, even though the insurance numbers are embedded in this number that we backed into. We got 10% for property, for maintenance, CAX. So we could set aside $175 there. No money from HOA because we already included everything in there earlier. And then we got 5% for vacancy because someone never moves out, right? The 10% for maintenance is so important because this is money that does not belong to you. Eventually, the toilet clogs or the roof needs to get replaced, or the HVAC needs to get replaced, or the water heater needs to get replaced. All these items will eventually happen. It is guaranteed that these things will need to get replaced. So if you don't set aside money right now, eventually you're going to have a big repair item or big replacement cost, and you're going to be reaching to your pocket to pay for those expenses. And you're going to realize that you probably didn't make any money for the last 3 or 4 years if you did not set aside this money. So if you don't underwrite with maintenance or CapEx, then you would be grossly overestimating the profits that you're truly making from this deal. And then you would probably be making some bad decisions or uninformed decisions based off that. So if you do 3-bedroom property and you have $1,750, your cash flow per month on this deal is going to be negative 410.5. That's a negative 9.6% return, assuming you bought this property for $275,000 with a roughly $14.3 thousand rehab. Whoops, 14,385 with a down payment of $20,000 and a more underlying loan of 2.75% interest rate. So you can see why this is no. Now, I also knew that 1950 was not a deal, but why? Let's go ahead and write in the numbers. But I knew it wasn't a deal because it was too close to it, and you subtract about 25% of 1950, then you're going to be below the monthly payment number of 1824 that we saw earlier, okay? But let's run through it. If you put in 1950, what are you still losing? You're still losing negative $260. And that for me is not a deal, because my personal criteria is I'm trying to make at least 10% return on my money, because otherwise it's really not worth the time and the energy and the risk you're taking on for this deal. And also, most importantly, this is not investment advice. All right. I'm not soliciting any investments on this call. It is not investment advice. I'm simply showing you guys all the work I'm doing every single day to underwrite these deals and showing you how you can plug in numbers for a sub-2 seller finance hybrid deal. That's what we're doing here at the end of the day. All right. So now that we got all of these numbers in, we are going to just talk a little bit about next steps. What my goal for you is, one, go to affordablehousing.io, right? get the deal analysis tool, and then copy my homework. That's my honest goal for one is I want you all to just copy my homework. Sometimes it's really hard to figure out whether or not what you're doing and whether or not you are on the right track. Well, the only way for you to know if you're on the right track is by creating that undeniable track history of what you're doing every single day, so that you can be confident to pull the trigger when a deal comes across your table. If a deal came across your table and slaps you across the face, you're going to recognize that it's a deal. And if a partner ever asks you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? Well, you can point them to your own YouTube channel at that point in time, right? Copy my homework, same spreadsheet, same property, just explain one thing better than I did today. You have the better analogy, and then put it on your own YouTube channel. So when a partner asks you, why do you think this is a deal? You can say, hey, I know this is a deal because for the past 248 days, I've been looking at deals, and these were all not deals. Might that make you feel a little bit more confident that you know what you're doing? Might that make your partners feel like you know what you're doing? I certainly hope so. And that's why we do this. We do this so we can lift each other up, so it's a little bit less lonely. And just remember, all it takes is just 18 minutes a day. And we've already been in this live for 16 minutes. 18 minutes a day. Copying my homework, if that's your path. And I think it's the path of least resistance. You don't have to give me any credit. But 18 minutes a day for 365 days, and you will be better at underwriting deals than 95% of the country. And then you'll be good. All right. I hope you guys all have an amazing Tuesday. I hope you have some quality time with your family and friends today. That's what life is all about. I hope I get to see you. I'm heading back to the East Coast. So if you're on the East Coast, make sure you DM me on Instagram at InvestWithKentHe. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Kent He, right on LinkedIn, and message me. And I'll talk to you again tomorrow for day 249. Have an amazing day, everybody. I'll talk to you tomorrow.